Campbell, great to see you again after a couple of weeks. Tonight, I've got to tell you, there's significant speculation down here about the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta. Now, Victoria's due to go to an election at the end of November, but I'm being told by people that there's 1 week of sitting next week, and then incredibly, they don't sit again until after the election, which is 4 months. But I'm told that there could be moves against her and she could be gone as early as next Tuesday.
Well, you wouldn't be surprised, would you, Steve? Because the Premier, I think now, of course, is toxic. And we've seen reports in the media over the last few weeks of people clearly starting to do the numbers and undermine and the like. And indeed, there was reports of one prominent member sort of having a real go in a caucus meeting. So when that starts to happen, the jungle drums are beating. And I guess those Labor MPs are just hell-bent on political survival now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously you've been Premier, you survived, you lost the election, lost your seat, and that's history. But what would be going on in the background here? I mean, Labor in Victoria is so faction-riven that, you know, you wouldn't be able to count the numbers unless you were right on the inside, because anything could be going on behind the scenes.
Right, imagine this. A government so busy fighting itself, it forgot to actually govern. A senator playing chess while everyone else plays checkers, and a $2 billion swimming pool that nobody asked for. Welcome to Australian politics in 2026, where the circus never leaves town. Quick favour before we dive in. If you are loving this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell right now. 90% of you watching haven't yet, and it takes about 2 seconds. Means the world to us. Right, let's get into it.
Well, gee whiz, Steve, I think that's outside my pay grade to comment on the inner workings of Labor in Victoria. I think I'd best stick to Queensland, where I know the personalities. But yeah, there's an air of desperation about them, which is interesting because, you know, the opposition haven't, you know, over the last few years covered themselves in glory and have had their own internal problems, as we know. But it is a very bad government. It's a toxic government. I mean, there was an article in the papers in the last few days about this sort of you know, complete retreat in regard to the ban on rock climbing around sort of places like Mount Arapiles and I think the Grampians. And, you know, that's only happening because they're desperate to try and do anything to sort of remove, you know, sort of lead from the saddlebags, like anything they can do now. And that just shows the desperation, because they were so hell-bent on kicking the climbers out of those national parks.
Yeah, they were. I mean, there's going to be a hell of a lot of promises made between now and November. Let's talk about One Nation and Pauline Hanson. She's challenging the coalition now to join forces with her to slam the door on these ISIS-linked fighters coming back, including this bloke who is in prison over there, the doctor. Angus Taylor never seems to give me the impression that he's actually willing to sit down and talk to Pauline Hanson. And I think I saw her in the last couple of weeks say that she hasn't had a proper conversation with him for months and months and months.
Well, the other point I'd make about it, though, and maybe I missed it, so I just want to be fair about this, but this sort of thing by Hanson is getting ahead of the game. It's about creating the next sort of play in the political hurly-burly. You know, this is what the Liberal Party should have been saying. Maybe it's anathema for them to suggest, you know, getting Hanson to support them. But the substantive issue is one that concerns Australians, which is these ratbags who've turned their back on Australia and gone to, you know, a foreign land to fight for a terrible bunch of zealots who did such awful criminal things to so many people in the Middle East. And you know, none of us want these people back, and I'd have thought it was a no-brainer for, you know, loudly and clearly, you know, anybody against the government to be standing up and saying, you know, we've got to actually change the laws and try and protect the country. So Hanson's ahead of the game in terms of the politics of this, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, the Liberals have been saying a similar thing, but I mean, she gets out and she gets the publicity because anything with Pauline's name on it these days, and, you know, I've been in the media a very long time, you put Pauline's name on any story and you're going to get clickbait on it. It's as simple as that.
Let's start in Victoria, where Labor has spent years looking like a footy team that keeps changing captains mid-season and hoping nobody notices the scoreboard. The pattern has become almost predictable. Internal grumbling, leaked frustrations and policy backflips that scream, "We are testing the wind, not steering the ship." When a government reverses a position, not because the evidence changed, but because the polling did, that is not leadership, that is a weather vane wearing a suit. And speaking of people who actually seem to have a strategy, let's talk about the political operator running laps around everyone in Canberra. Enter Pauline Hanson, who this week wrote directly to Opposition Leader Angus Taylor, offering One Nation's support for tougher legislation to keep ISIS-linked individuals out of Australia. Love her or loathe her, the political timing is sharp. While bigger parties dither over messaging committees and focus groups, Hanson identified an issue Australians overwhelmingly agree on. Nobody wants convicted foreign fighters walking back through customs, and she planted her flag on it first. That is not fringe politics anymore. That is a masterclass in reading the room while everyone else is still finding their seats. Now, if you thought that was an expensive headline, wait until you hear what is happening up in sunny Queensland.
Let's talk about much more happy things, Olympic Games and the infrastructure build in Queensland. Might be so happy. I was around when we had all these debates in Sydney about what we should spend on athletes' villages and the main stadium out there, and, you know, everybody was saying, oh, it's going to cost us too much. Well, you're now in the middle of this, Brisbane Olympics 2032. There's suggestion that the cost could blow out to more than $20 billion. I mean, that's just a figure plucked out of the air. But is there genuine concern among Queenslanders that this thing's going to cost too much money?
Steve, I think it's generally the community these days expect, sadly, these major infrastructure projects, wherever they are, whatever government's doing it, to run over time and over budget. One thing that can't happen here, clearly, is they cannot go over time because there is a very clear deadline. There was a very interesting comment by the Chief Executive Officer of the Games Infrastructure Coordination Authority the other day. I'll just read it to you at a press conference about the swimming venues. He said, you marry scope and time, and it's a complex process. We've barely started it. And really what he was saying is we're up against a hard time target. I'll interpret this. This means that the budget will be moving because you've only got certain levers on major projects, and if you've got a hard deadline and you've got to accelerate, you've got to push hard, it costs more. And regular viewers of this show will know my opinions on some of these matters anyway, and I've been saying, putting aside the swimming stadium, the major stadium across the other side of the major road and railway line in Victoria Park itself, that's going to be a lot more expensive than the money they've been talking about.
Well, speaking of swimming centre, Tracy Wickham's unloaded. She's a two-time Commonwealth Games gold medalist. Talking about the 2032 pool, she says it could end up being a white elephant, and she's even saying that the swimming should be held at Olympic Park in Sydney. I hope she's ready for the backlash. But this swimming complex, does Brisbane need another aquatic centre? Could they have not renovated the one that was used way back when for the Commonwealth Games?
I've absolutely had the same thought about, you know, whether they should be using Chandler. We were sold these games on the basis that we'd use existing infrastructure and we wouldn't be getting into all this building of new facilities and the like. And yet the government's thrown caution to the winds and off they go. This is the state government. The only thing I can say positive thing about this new swim centre is I will say that the architecture is spectacular. It's beautiful. I was quite excited to see those concepts. I'm not excited about the bill of at least $1.2 billion, and I don't particularly like the location as well. I won't go over old ground. But yeah, look, the government has really thrown caution to the winds, and the bill will be a lot higher. There is no doubt about that.
Brisbane's 2032 Olympics was sold as a low-cost, no-fuss games. Fast forward to today, and the National Aquatic Centre alone has blown out from $650 million to over $1.2 billion, nearly doubling almost overnight. Add the main stadium at Victoria Park, now sitting around $3.8 billion, and you have got a project ballooning faster than a beach ball at a birthday party. Just this year, the Aquatic Centre design was sent back to the drawing board for exceeding its own inflated budget. Meanwhile, critics keep pointing at Sydney's existing facilities and asking a fairly reasonable question: why build new when renovating could save taxpayers a fortune? So here is the through line connecting Victoria's wobbles, Hanson's chess moves and Queensland's blowout budgets: reactive governance. Decisions driven by headlines and election clocks rather than long-term vision. It is politics as spectacle, and taxpayers are the ones footing the bill for the show. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below.